If you're gonna be at the top, you're gonna piss some people off.
I chose bodybuilding. It didn't choose me. People think I'm sour grapes that I didn't beat Dorian. Nobody beat Dorian.
Current era against your era.
They're lucky that Dexter's not 10 years younger.
Top 5 greatest bodybuilders of all time.
You're not gonna find me talking about how to use anabolics with anybody.
You ever gotten into a fight with any of these guys?
I pushed a lot of buttons, trust me.
Whose fault is that, though?
I heard you say something like, what is the Olympia doing for you athletes? They don't owe us anything. It's just like boxing. Like, if you're a boxer. Well, listen, we're not a union. Hold on. This is not the NFL and it's not the NBA. You've got Flex Lewis coming back. Hottie Chupin's coming back. Does Phil Heath come back or not? The Olympia does not need Phil Heath to make the Mr. Olympia.
I'm not saying that. Of course it doesn't.
How can he sit at home and watch the competition that made him who he is?
You're sensitive.
I'm not sensitive.
Sean.
In terms of what? Are you kidding me? The Olympia was bigger and better than it's ever been, even though Phil wasn't there. All I'm saying is it's bigger than any bodybuilder. It's an institution. He was working with Dallas McCarver. When he started working with Dallas McCarver, I said, Dallas has 6 months to live. He died 8 months later. He was working with Dallas McCarver. When he started working with Dallas McCarver, I said, Dallas has 6 months to live. He died 8 months later. So I have a reason to be pissed. I'm not prophetic. I'm not Nostradamus. But I know danger when I see it, and I knew that guy was dangerous back in the 90s.
So let me ask you this. I got my second video to show you here. And the second video, I think you kind of have an idea what the video is going to be. This is the second video, okay? You know what's about to happen in about 11 seconds.
I'm at the mic. I tried to approach Dallas for an interview prior to him going on stage.
He
said, get the hell away from me. I'm not talking to you. Before he walked on this stage, 10 minutes before he walked out there, I said, why are you not talking to me? He says, because you were talking shit. Earlier in the year, probably 2 months before that, when he was working with Chad, he went and posed for Jim Mannion 2 weeks out from the Arnold, Ohio. This is the Arnold in Australia. Dallas went up to Pittsburgh and posed for Jim Mannion, bent over, he was cramping, he was pale white, he looked like he was in distress, but they videotaped it and put it online. I looked at it and analyzed it, and I said, who does that? Like, who would ever go in front of, I would never go in front of Joe Weider, totally pale, bent over, can't hold my front double bicep, can't hold my stomach in. What kind of analysis was he expecting? He didn't like what I had to say. He was working with Chad Nichols and a couple other people. He took it personal. He went in, and I said, despite all of that, in 3 weeks' time, he's going to be fighting for first place against Cedric McMillan. He got second place. 2 weeks later, the guy gets carried off the stage and is throwing up. I was standing on the other side of the stage when they brought him back there with the EMTs. I wasn't gloating in his demise, but I knew then he's in distress for one reason, the things that he was doing. He was being fast-tracked, taking too much too soon. Didn't want to hear the brutal, honest truth. I said he should have shut it down after that contest. 2 months after that show, he went up and guest posed at the Emerald Cup weighing about 315 pounds. So he didn't shut it down. He actually accelerated. He went from dieted down on stage to putting on another probably 40 pounds, guest posing, straight into the ground. It could have been prevented.
So let me ask you this. Here's some of the bodybuilders that have passed away. Dallas McCarver, Rich Piana, Andres Munzer, Mohamed Benaziza, Greg Kovacs, Matarazzo, Comerford, El Sambati, Artwood, Charles Dorr, Hillerbrand, Menser, both of them brothers, Ray and Mike, Ross, Youngblood, you know these
Matt
names.
Duvall.
Matt Duvall, and there's many names. I don't want to go through all of them. You know the names.
I know all of them.
How many of these could have been prevented?
You can't save someone from themselves.
No. Here's what I mean by it. And I'm going in a part to help with an element of bodybuilding that's uncomfortable to talk about. This is what I mean by it. I'm not saying you can't prevent somebody from doing it. They're doing it because they feel the doing part could potentially help them have an edge over their competitors, right? But how much of it has to do with going and doing too much dosage of the steroids, whatever it is, the GH, the PEDs? How much could that have been prevented?
Well, we don't know what any of these guys are taking. I can't paint them with the same brush. You hear the word steroids, you think a needle and a syringe, but there's a lot of different types of steroids. These guys, some of them I would attribute probably insulin. I'd probably attribute some of the growth hormone. There's use and abuse, and nobody's smarter than the next, but our sport is made up of a lot of misfits. We come in with a lot of baggage. Some of the guys think if a little bit's good, a little bit more is better. Some may have some predisposed conditions that exist that might get exacerbated by growth hormones, speed up the process. We know that Munzer, probably diuretics. Vince Comerford's dead, but he was over the age of 50 when he died, and he was a notorious drug user. Paul DeMeo, a huge drug user. So we don't know the habits of these bodybuilders, whether they cycled on or cycled off. But I can tell you, the ones that are there, I think the one commonality is we would all agree that they're probably abusers, not users. And there's a big difference. I can drink a beer and I'm fine. You might not be able to stop at one. You need 3 or 4. And then you're either the life of the party, you're throwing up, or you want to fight everybody in the room. It's the same alcohol, it just has a different effect on your height, weight, and your shape. The bodybuilders, when it comes down to pharmacology, are combining all kinds of stuff. A lot of them are working with trainers that have no idea. Getting a blood test isn't the end-all, be-all for taking steroids. There's use and abuse. Just because you have a Ferrari doesn't mean you have to drive 200 miles an hour. And if you do, we could pretty much bet
Just a matter of time.
it's a matter of time.
It's a matter of time.
With a lot of these bodybuilders, when you have the means and the access, and you have people pushing you. I saw you interview Ronnie Coleman. I don't think Ronnie Coleman probably even, he was taking stuff he didn't even know he was taking. Chad Nichols was giving him whatever he wanted to give him. Whatever it was.
Right.
He didn't know what it was. So high-level athletes with high intelligence are willing to do whatever it takes. So you're going to have this list. But this is a very small list by comparison to the millions of weightlifters and the thousands of professionals. So there's going to be a casualty.
I'm going a completely different angle
Go ahead.
than where you think I'm going. This is the angle I'm taking right now. The angle I'm taking is, you said Samir Bannout. You said in one of the interviews, you said the one guy that I would be afraid of going on stage is in 1983.
Yeah,
Bannout, because you beat him in an 88 or 89, but the 83 one, right? You said you'd be afraid to go up against that guy.
Scary.
Hey, look at that guy. Beautiful
Yeah.
body. Just a godlike figure,
Very
right?
complete.
Good physique. But today, do you have any health problems?
Yeah, absolutely none.
Absolutely not. That's the point I'm making. So the point I'm trying to make to you is, it doesn't mean you didn't do steroids. You don't hear a lot of times about drug testing with the guys at the top, even though everybody knows everyone's using it. This is the point I'm trying to make. If you're 22 today, would you go the same route with Mr. Olympia?
I would, because it's a numbers game. Listen, I loved bodybuilding. I wouldn't do it for free. If that prize money is what it is, I'm in it because I would have the potential, and I would think I could beat what's there. I think what's there now is more beatable than when I started. When I started, I mean, what was there? I was like Greek gods. I mean, and you had to mind you, Lee Labrada was getting second, and Rich Kaspari was getting second. So on one hand, it was unfathomable that I could be there, and on the other hand, it was realistic that if I keep doing what I'm doing, I could be there. And I woke up one day and I was there. When I heard Lee Labrada announced in 3rd place and Sean Ray in 2nd in '94, I mean, for me, that was my small Olympia victory. Even during my time, Lee Haney was the only one to finish his career, I think, better than when he started. His last Olympia in '91, he could sail off into the sunset. Dorian Yates, you needed a wheelchair for him. Ronnie Coleman, he's kind of sloppy at the end. Phil Heath was not what he was when he started his reign. So these bodybuilders, they don't get better. They typically get worse. Dexter's found a way to kind of be consistently consistent, but he's nowhere near the 2008. He's found a way to maximize what he has without trying to blow it all out.
How's his health?
That's a question for Dexter, because I wouldn't know. I imagine.
What I mean by that is, did a Chad get a hold of him or no?
He's always worked with like Charles Glass.
Okay.
He's had various, George Farah. Charles isn't a guru. He's a coach. He's a trainer.
He's a legend.
Chad is a guru that doesn't have the medical background, and I don't have the respect for him. His wife was a 4-time Ms. Olympia. She was the game changer on the female side of things because he dried her out. Ronnie Coleman didn't win the Olympia because he got big. Ronnie Coleman dried out through whatever protocols Chad put him on. You saw him in '98. He was never that dry in his whole career. That's why he leapfrogged over everyone. And then everyone wanted to jump onto that bandwagon.
Backstage stories. So, Kevin says a story about you. Kevin says...
I had dinner with him last night.
Yeah, dinner with him last night. But by the way, I always liked his physique. In the Army, had pictures on the wall. I always liked... Kevin had a very different kind of a physique. I mean, I don't know... I actually can't say another physique that matches Kevin's physique. It was very different of a physique he had. But he told a story one time. He says backstage, he's dehydrated, and he's talking to you, and he says, "Hey, Sean, listen, man, I need some. Can you give me some of those orange slice?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, I'm not giving you orange slice. You go get your own, right?" Yeah. So he said there's a different madness with Sean behind closed doors when it's competition, when you compete against each other. Do you have any crazy stories against other guys like a Yates or a Ronnie or a Haney or any of those stories that you have?
Yeah, no, there was nothing crazy about showing up backstage at the Olympia. Listen, I mean, I walk in there and it's like this. This is what I'm looking at. I'm 5'7", 210 pounds, but I got to stand next to what, that's what they look like. It was very intimidating to think that I've got to ignore them on stage. You're not gonna. I tried to squeeze in a couple of pose downs and got muscled out. I mean, elbows flying. Flex Wheeler almost knocked me off the stage because I tried to duck underneath.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was in a washing machine. And Ronnie Coleman and Kevin, these guys are like, you know, in my mind, they're like raging. We were more sociable off stage. Backstage, it was more like a church. You know, you just do your meditation and you do your thing. I didn't have to meditate. I got there. I was full of energy. This is what I train for. It's what I live for. It's like game day for me. I never felt near death. I didn't cramp up. I only had one cramp in my life in a bodybuilding show in '92 in Helsinki, Finland. I tried to dry out because it's a transatlantic flight, and I tried to dry out, and I just dried out a little bit too much. I cramped up in my hamstring very briefly. But I never felt, one, that I didn't have a shot at winning, and two, that this is a miserable experience.
Never felt.
I always thought that on any given day I could be Mr. Olympia, which is what got me out of bed every year.
You ever gotten into a fight with any of these guys, or no? Was there
No,
ever like
I mean, listen, bodybuilders are like cats. They make a lot of noise, but they don't necessarily deliver. Dorian wasn't someone you wanted to stare down.
current era against your era?
They're lucky that Dexter's not 10 years younger.
Top 5 greatest bodybuilders of all time.
You're not going to find me talking about how to use anabolics with anybody.
You ever gotten into a fight with any of these guys?
I pushed a lot of buttons, trust me.
Whose fault is that, though?
I heard you say something like, what is the Olympia doing for you athletes? They don't owe us anything. It's just like boxing. Like, if you're a
can't
boxer.
say that.
Well, listen, we're not
You
a
can't
union.
say
Hold
that,
on.
Sean.
This is not the NFL and it's not the NBA. You've got Flex Lewis coming back. Hottie Chupin's coming back. Does Phil Heath come back or not? The Olympia does not need Phil Heath to make the Mr. Olympia.
I'm not saying that. Of course it doesn't.
How can he sit at home and watch the competition that made him who he is?
You're sensitive.
I'm not sensitive.
Sean.
In terms of what? Are you kidding me? The Olympia was bigger and better than it's ever been, even though Phil wasn't there. All I'm saying is it's bigger than any bodybuilder. It's an institution.
How about obviously we know Phil, but I'm more asking about our buddy here.
Yeah, Big Rami is just a promise that hasn't been kept. He reminds me a lot of Cedric McMillan on the day of the Olympia. Rami has some properties that are really good. He just hasn't tried to sculpt it. Those quadriceps he should never, ever press. He's got to bring those quads down. If his quads were down, it would look more palatable because the arms are so big. He has potential right now to come into this year's Olympia and do some things.
Do some things means first or second?
He could do some things because of the people he's up against, including Brandon Curry. By the way,
you think he can win it all?
By the way, Brandon Curry beat him in his last Olympia. Brandon was 5th and he was 6th place. He wasn't in shape, but him in shape, Brandon Curry hadn't beaten him. So I'd like to see that rubber match to see which direction they go.
Okay, our buddy here from Iran.
Yeah.
What do you think about his physique? People's champ.
It's not a favorite physique of mine. He doesn't have the Labrada-esque type shape. The calves are kind of light. The waist is not very tapered. He's got some good muscularity. The quads don't have the type of sweeps I like. But he's competing in a lineup where he can do very well. This is not one that's going to do very well in my era. Absolutely not.
Top 10?
Not in the top 10. Not in the top 10.
Not in the top
I can
10.
name top 10 physiques that in my era that could beat Hottie, but he's right where he needs to be in this era.
What are your thoughts on El Somebody? I was always a fan of El Somebody as a physique. I didn't know him obviously personally, but as a physique, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Nasser's physique. Here he beat Dorian. This is 97, I'm assuming. He beat Dorian not only from the front, but the back, and that's where Dorian's strength was, and he just beat him. I was 3rd in this competition. But Nasser was full of stuff, man. I mean, he put oil in his arms, he put oil in his shoulders, he put them in his calves. So when you know these things that some of the bodybuilders are doing,
he had to do surgery for his shoulders or something.
Absolutely. So me being an artist, knowing the things that Nasser was doing, I'm not going to say it's an unfair playing field, but to the expert eye, you can see the things he was doing, and he should have been marked down for it. And later in his career, he couldn't make the top 10 of a regular open show, let alone an Olympia.
So let's do the one that all your peers have been doing. Whether it's Ronnie, whether it's Dorian, whether it's Flex. Flex was the nicest out of all of them. Ronnie's reaction was very different, and then Dorian was just the first one that went through it. Current era against your era.
No, none of these guys in the top 10.
None of them in top 10.
I said the top 10. So the one that could be the top 10 would probably be Dexter Jackson. But the other guys, no. I think 10th would be Brandon, and that's not a slap in Brandon's face. But those other guys, no. I mean, Rolly Winkler, for as good as he is, he couldn't beat Milo Sarchev. And Milo Sarchev, I think, got 1/10th place in the Olympia. Definitely couldn't beat a Chris Cormier. These guys are right where they need to be for their timing. And they're lucky that Dexter's not 10 years younger.
He couldn't beat Dexter if he was 10 years younger.
Dexter in his prime couldn't make the top 6 of the Olympia. And I was there.
Say that one more time. Dexter in his prime couldn't make a top 6 during your era.
During my era, yeah. I think Dexter would be fighting with Chris Cormier for 6th place.
He's got an incredible physique.
There's no question. He's a Hall of Famer.
Incredible physique.
Dexter, he was in the 99, 2000, and 2001 Olympia with me. He doesn't like me to remind him that he didn't beat me. He's beaten everyone else. He beat Kevin, he beat Flex. He didn't beat me, and he hates it when I remind him of that. But I'm a little bit older. I think I'm 4 years older than Dexter. But at the time, if we're talking about the 99 Olympia competition, Dexter would be fighting Chris Cormier to get into the top 6.
What do you think about here?
Well, there's a lot of thoughts there, man, because forget the fact that I thought I should have beat Dorian Yates.
This is 94.
Yeah. Forget the fact that I thought I should have beat Dorian Yates. I think that Dorian in 94 was just a little too sloppy. Listen, he was big. There's no question, you can't take that away. The bicep tear was very noticeable, but when he put his hands down, the obliques were hanging over the shorts. So for that matter, you got to go with the one with the fewest flaws. Forget it that I'm not trying to say I'm perfect, but I had fewer flaws on the day. And this is where the sport of bodybuilding could have turned the corner and gone a totally different direction, which would have favored me. But I pretty much knew by the time I got to the finals that the people that were judging that show were not going to change their opinion. But they could have done the right thing, and I thought they didn't that year. I didn't hold it personal against Dorian. I held it against the system.
I'd be curious to know if those judges are still around. Okay, speed round. I'll give you names. Tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay, a name, first that comes to mind. Kevin Levrone.
That's my boy, man. I mean, he's probably the closest one I'm to in bodybuilding. I mean, we have a love-hate brother relationship. He didn't like what I had to say about his comeback for the Olympia, but sometimes the truth hurts. When you hear it from your friend, that you know,
it's even more painful.
It's even more painful. Yeah. But he's come full circle and acknowledged that, you know, some of the things I was saying were coming from a good place.
Ronnie Coleman.
There's nothing bad you can say about Ronnie. He should have took his foot off the gas a long time ago. He doesn't blame bodybuilding for his injuries. He blames the surgeons, but I believe it's the bodybuilding. If he had taken his foot off the gas when he retired, that I think we'd be talking to a different Ronnie.
Dorian Yates.
Dorian, as if he was a game changer, because that's when it changed when he arrived. If there's no Dorian Yates, you probably have Sean Ray as a Mr. Olympia. You probably have a Flex Wheeler. Dorian changed the game. He ushered in the mass monsters, because no one ever thought Lee Haney was a mass monster, because he had
45.
Yeah, he had the nice shape, but Dorian ushered in something that brought out the bigness and the size.
How about your best friend Lee Priest?
I think Lee, he's a loss. He's lost, bro. I mean, Lee's animosity towards me goes back to me taking one of his girlfriends. Actually, I didn't take his girlfriend. It was his ex-girlfriend that I wound up being with, and he never got over it. He never beat me. I was never in competition with him, but every time I turned around, he was dropping my name in a negative sense. He's a guy that's still trying to find himself. You can tell with all the paint all over his face. He's running from something.
Cool. Phil Heath.
Man, I would have to say, because I was closer to Phil when he first turned pro than after, because I worked for a different magazine. I worked for Muscular Development. He worked for Muscle and Fitness. And so we've had this big chasm come between us. So he's somebody different now. But I got to say, he's self-made. I don't think anybody can take credit for what Phil's done. The word gift is appropriate, because when we saw him, we said, holy crap, this is not something that you can just develop. He's born with it. He's got a gift. I think he could do a little bit more with it than what he's done, but maybe he's doing with it what he wants. I mean, to whom much is given, much is expected. I come from the bodybuilding elk, like that Olympia is the Holy Grail. He's got 7 of them. He's got different ideas what each one of those mean to him. But I got to tell you, I think he's done the best with what he could with it. I'd like to see him do more in the landscape of bodybuilding. If the powers that be are not allowing him, that's a different story. But I'd love to have him be more relevant, because I think for the past year he's been a little bit too invisible. And the best thing for bodybuilding right now is if Phil came back, takes his title, because I believe that that has his name on it. And if you're asking me to give him advice, Phil, go back to your first love, get that title, tie that record, and then go for number 9. He has a very small window at his age that he could actually wind up with 9. All he has to do is what he's always done. Fix the problem. That's the easy part. He doesn't have to go build up bigger arms or a bigger back. But when you sit on the sidelines for a year, you become civilized. It's like coming home from war and they call you back up to go back. Getting under that weight, doing the things that you have to do, it takes a very disciplined mind. And I'm not sure he's not too civilized right now. He may be a little too civilized for that. He can't come back to fail. Like, he would have to know he's going to war. And going to war with these guys, I mean, there's nothing he needs to do other than just come in a little bit lighter. Ronnie Coleman did it in 2001 when he won the Arnold Classic Championship before he almost died in 2001. Phil doesn't need to die to win number 8. Phil comes back, he would send shockwaves through all of these guys because he has the tools. He doesn't have to rebuild anything. He got penalized for what they were going to be penalizing him. He knew what he was going to get penalized for. Now just fix it and come back and get your title.
When's the last time you guys spoke, you and him?
I talked to Phil over the new year, and I basically told him he needed to call Jim Mannion.
He needed to call Jim Mannion.
Yes.
Okay.